Well, hey, let's talk about ADUs.
All right.
Auxiliary dwelling units, for those. I was talking to a client the other day, and we were using the term ADU, and she's like, me and the husband, we're like talking like we know what we're doing, and she goes home and she Googles it. She's like, what they mean, and she's like, oh, they mean a carriage house,
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, is carriage house the right term?
Right.
But, she's like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, a carriage house. We want one of those. Yeah. Because ADU just sounds boring.
Right.
But, in the state of Colorado, they have changed in the state. They come, I think it's June 30th, 2025.
Yeah.
All jurisdictions that are home rule, cities, towns, and there's a list of them on the state site, have to allow for auxiliary dwelling units,
right,
in their jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So there's some caveats. I think it's going to get real sticky with HOAs, but anywhere you can have a single family home, you have to be able to have an auxiliary dwelling unit.
Right.
So each municipality is scrambling right now to make their own codes or planning review requirements to allow for it.
Right.
And so that's going to be interesting to see, but we've been doing them over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
There's still some municipalities that have it. What is it that you think the benefit of having ADUs in the Boulder County area and the jurisdictions that we work a lot in?
I mean, affordability for one. I mean, I think that's the biggest reason and the biggest push for that.
Yeah.
There's so many ways that helps with affordability. And it's really, any municipality that you're in, it helps. I'm a big believer in ADUs, carriage houses, guest suites, whatever they are.
Why?
Because it allows for more density and it allows for more walkable cities. And it allows for people to be able to buy homes because it can be a source of additional income.
An ADU necessarily isn't for sale, though.
No, it's not for sale, but it can help support your mortgage.
Yeah.
So if you can get the loan to buy the home, which is a huge hurdle in itself, but once you do that, it can help you pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest difference between, what we would call like a guest suite and an ADU is that you can turn that into its own dwelling unit, and you can turn that into a long-term rental.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of, or I guess I should say I support, like the Airbnb thing where like if I was in a neighborhood, I wouldn't want a bunch of people building these to like hack their mortgage to have a bunch of random people, or not random, like tourists in my neighborhood. But if it's somebody that's like living there long term, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
For people that work at restaurants or all kinds of service jobs, they need places to live and not drive 40 minutes to get there.
Absolutely. I think about it with having college age and post college kids now.
Yeah.
And they're getting their first job and they want to be in the area, but they don't want to live in our house. I'm like, if I could get my own little unit at my house, give some affordability to my family to be able to do life here and not feel like they have to move to some other state where it is affordable.
Right. So. And then, and then on the flip side, like there's so many, when you're talking about generational things like that, I don't know how many clients we run into all the time that, they have at least one parent left that they want to bring in to their home.
Yeah.
Because they can live on their own, but they just need a little bit of support. And that long-term care that isn't provided, or that if you have to go seek a facility to get that, it's so expensive.
So expensive. We just went through that with our folks, and you're just like, how much a month? Really?
Yeah.
If we could get the facility costs out and just do the nursing care that needs to come in, that would be awesome. Yeah,
and like my wife worked for a home care health facility before she worked for American Cancer, and that was a big part of it. Like just being able to do some home visits, like that kind of health care that can bridge the gap. sometimes that's all people need, and they don't need to be in a facility that costs thousands a month to live in.
Yeah. I mean, I think of all the things that it can solve, having the ability to do this. And an ADU can be inside the house, attached to the house, or detached from the house.
Yeah, and that's going to be city specific and zoning. And so like in Denver, there's areas where it can be attached and there's areas where it can't.
Okay.
And it just depends on what zone you're in, like what neighborhood you're in, and what they allow.
And I think they're all still trying to figure this out. And even the state.
Denver was on top of it. And I think their code, they have these different form factors and the way that it works. So they had a lot of it already built into their code because it was allowed to an extent. They just had to make a few adjustments. Yeah. I'm sure it was a lot of work for the city, but they just sort of amended their code. I don't think it was a huge lift.
The city of Lafayette has a whole section on their website dedicated to ADUs to help it make it easier to understand all the requirements and what's allowed and what's not.
Awesome.
I think the city of Louisville last Tuesday or this Tuesday this week was just voting on their interpretation of what is going to be allowed at city council for ADUs.
Okay.
Boulder County, they've been working on it. Through the Marshall Fire, they actually allowed, I think it was through Article 19, ADUs. And we were one of the first through another Marshall Fire project that we did. It was complicated.
Yeah.
Because it was inside the home.
Got it.
And then so there was a lot of interpretation on fire separation, mechanical separation. And so it got pretty tricky. We had to bring in a fire expert, a fire consultant to come in and inspect and tell us how we need to, if you cut a can light into the ceiling, but there's another unit above, what we have to do. And what kind of caulk we have to use, and each penetration through that 1 hour separation. It was kind of complicated. I'd say build it detached if you can.
Well, and some of that has to do with it. So you had your dwelling unit below another dwelling unit?
Yeah, so the main house was like a ranch, and part of the house had like a walkout basement, but there was still the living space of the single family above it.
Right.
And so that's where it got tricky. It was fun. It was a challenge. Awesome place. We were able to do ADU on Main Street in Louisville. And you got to understand each municipality's code. Right? And their zoning allowables. So, because they have like the Old Town Overlay District.
Right.
And then they have this zoning, then they have this, and this is an estate subdivision, and and it gets pretty complicated. But in the detached structures in Louisville, they had a height requirement of 20 feet.
Right.
And we had these house plans that we inherited on a project that kind of stalled out. And we're like, well, the city updated how they calculate height. And so this building didn't meet the height requirement anymore. And we needed higher hill heights for the new energy code. So we had to do all this updating. But working with the city in the Old Town Overlay, if your lot is over so many square feet, you can have 2 primary dwellings.
Right.
And then your height restriction goes away.
Right. Well, it goes from 20 to 27.
Yeah. I mean, that's 7 feet.
But it's a big difference.
It's a big difference. And so I was like, oh man, I commend architects for really digging into all the different zoning requirements and allowables. What's allowed? And because the city sometimes doesn't even know how to interpret their codes. We're working on another one in Lafayette, and we're like, well, it's an ADU, but it's a mixed use lot. And so the front's a business. The back is just an empty lot. And they're like, oh, let's just put an ADU so that, we want to live work. Well, it's not really an ADU. It's like but it's not a primary resident either. So it's this weird zoning area that we're trying to figure out how to get through with some architects. And
cool.
We got to go through an application review, and it takes a lot longer, but that's going to be a fun one.
Oh, cool.
In unincorporated Boulder County, you can do caretaker houses in agricultural.
Yeah.
Or in-law? What is that?
So Boulder County is really tricky because the only two that they allow are caretaker and agricultural. Agricultural, you have to have like a working farm, and you have to be able to prove that that person living there is working your farm, and that it's a required like full-time position.
Yeah.
We did that Homes for Our Troops house in Boulder County, and they were interested in an ADU, and that's where we kind of looked at the caretaker part of it. But that's tricky too, because you have to have a caretaker that is taking care of that person full-time, basically.
Yeah.
And then they state, even if you get approved for one of those, if that person is no longer needed, then you can't have your ADU anymore.
Yeah.
So nobody really wants to build a home, even if it's a 700 square foot home. They don't want to build it and then have to tear it down.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's do some Boulder County ADU trivia, and let's see what you really know.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
All right. These came from the interchatawebs. In Boulder County, can you build an ADU that's attached to your primary residence and still rent it out?
No.
I'm going to give you 3 options. Okay? A, B, and C. Yes, but only to immediate family. B, yes, if it meets the size and occupancy requirements. And C, nope, attached units are for storage only. And you said?
No.
No. Actually, the answer is yes, if it meets the size and occupancy requirements.
Inside of Boulder County?
Uh-huh. So didn't they they're just updating all their ADU requirements, right?
Well, when they sent out because they did the site plan review moratorium,
mm-hmm.
and then they sent out the proposal, and I thought I still saw the same ADU regulations in there, because we were curious about that with the new state law, if Boulder County was going to be required to have ADUs. And I thought it was, I don't think they are required. It's just within city limits.
I was looking, unincorporated Douglas County has to abide by it. They're on the list.
Okay.
I didn't check if Boulder County, but people want them.
Oh yeah.
And so they want to find a way to make them happen.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right.
There will be a lot built in Boulder County as soon as they allow it.
Yeah.
So if they are, that's great.
Fact check that. Come on, check it.
Well, I wonder, because it says yes with the right occupancy.
Uh-huh.
So I wonder if that's true, but that's talking about the caretaker and the agricultural worker.
Yeah. Okay.
And then attached and detached, I don't think there's anything specific in Boulder County about whether it has to be.
Yeah. Well, A, B, C, and D. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
What's the maximum size allowed for a detached ADU in unincorporated Boulder County? A, 500, B, 800, C, 1,200, or D, sky is the limit if you bribe the planners with tacos.
I thought it was 700.
I did too.
And I have to check.
I mean, and that's what some of the municipalities.
Maybe it's 800.
Yeah, like
I might be out of date on my ADU knowledge now.
Yeah, well, like even in Lafayette, you look at theirs, and there's requirements, size limitations. I wonder what the city of Louisville will do.
Yeah, Lakewood. I know Lakewood allows them, and it's like 750 square feet.
Yeah. So
we're building a house. I'm designing this house that has one available, but it's going to be part of the original house. Like, so if they can have somebody like close to them and their family use it as a guest suite. But then if they ever need to, as they get older, they can just wall it off and make it an ADU.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, it's going to be hard to land in each area what you can and can't do.
Especially if they all have different size requirements.
Yeah. I mean, because what really is 700 square feet? What is that?
It's a small living room with like a kitchenette. Basically a bathroom and a bedroom.
And that's it.
Yeah. I mean, if you expect to have like, a closet, queen or king size bed, and then a couch, you don't have a lot. 700 gets eaten up.
Yeah.
Pretty quick. Or you get into like the micro apartment type stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went to Denver and looked for studio apartments, a lot of them are kind of in that, I would say $700 to $1,000.
Oh yeah.
And then you'd have to, once you get under that, those are like the micro apartment stuff.
Yeah. Micro apartments.
The Wanderlust version with Paul Rudd and
all right. True or false? And we got to fact check all these, but if you build an ADU in Boulder County, you have to live in either the primary home or the ADU.
True.
True. Owner occupancy is a must. So you can't rent and rent, right?
Right.
Okay. Ooh, here's a different one. We'll see if it's right. In the city of Boulder, what's a quirky rule that applies to ADUs? Give you some options. A, you must plant native pollinators in the front yard. B, your ADU can't have a dishwasher. C, you're limited to 3 unrelated people living on the property. Or D, it must include a solar-powered composting toilet.
I'm going to go, I don't know the answer to this.
But it's bold because it's the city.
I'm going to go with C because A could be one, but because they have like a landscape review. So they actually have like a landscape inspection now. But I'm going to go with C.
C. You're limited to 3 unrelated people living on the property.
Right.
Yeah. Who came up with this? It must include a solar-powered composting toilet. If you guys don't know, we got Ben here, and he puts together some of these. So we'll go after Ben.
C was the answer?
C was the answer. You are correct. Yeah, good. All right. Myth or fact? You can just call your basement an ADU and start renting it out. No permits needed.
Myth.
Easy. Even if it has a door, a stove, and a live, laugh, love sign, Boulder County still wants you to pull building permits to meet the building codes and register the property.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
Myth. All right. Extra question. We're going to do this. Which of the following is not a benefit of adding an ADU? So we talked about why you thought were benefits, right?
Yeah.
Extra rental income, A. B, multi-generational living. C, getting invited to a code enforcement's annual barbecue. D, increased property value.
D.
C.
No.
C.
C.
Not correct.
C.
Getting invited to a code enforcement annual barbecue. All right. Code enforcement. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the Lafarge ADU studio that we got to do. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that project a little bit. I thought it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So that one, that's using the older zoning code.
Yeah.
But they actually had like a studio.
This is in in the city of Louisville.
Yeah, and it was in the Old Town overlay. So they had an existing house, and there was an existing studio there without a garage, and a couple little like carriage houses or like sheds, more or less.
Sheds.
And so they wanted to be able to park their car, and then one of them is wheelchair bound. He's in a motorized wheelchair, and so he needed a fully accessible bathroom. It didn't have to be ADA, but he needed it to be more accessible than a standard bathroom
for him. Yeah.
So we worked through that. Made an accessible shower, met most of the ambulatory codes about how to navigate with that. Working closely with him, collaborating with that, and then we're able to do a 2-car garage for them, and then design a future guest suite above.
So it was a guest suite that we did above. Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it's not big enough. It was only like 400 square feet, right? Or maybe 500?
Yeah, I think it was about 500. I mean, it would be
a 2-car oversized garage.
Yeah. So it would have been, a kitchen. Well, the way we laid it out so that they could build it in the future was a small bathroom, a kitchenette, and a living room. Yeah. So it didn't have its own bedroom. So that's smaller than even the 700 that we were. Yeah, it's a studio apartment.
Studio. And then the guest suite, I'd call that an ADU on 1000 Main.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that one was, because that one had its own bedroom, shy of having a range, because that's the only thing that really just, if somebody wants to live there full time, they would want to have an actual range and not be cooking on a hot plate.
Yeah.
All year long.
Yeah. Pull your mic closer. No. One of the things I know, I was talking to somebody at the city of Louisville, I'm going to have some water because we're going to talk about water, is they want to implement potentially a water tap fee, right? Or a water fixture count.
Right.
And because you're typically tapping off the home's existing water meter to feed this other structure. And you're like, okay, well, we want to make it affordable for people.
Right.
One of my questions to the city guy was, all right, our water calculations, the water tap calculations are done by, Public Works.
Right.
Okay. Our building code has changed over the years for washers to be more water sense, toilets, low flush, everything has to be water sense.
Right.
And I'm wondering if they are taking that into account in their calculations for this new stuff. Because I bet you Public Works updates their water usage how often,
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, I would love to know more about, because we've worked through that all the time. Yeah. And so, like, things you get dinged on is like multiple hose bibs and if you have a couple of dishwashers, like that, everything you have, every single fixture adds. But it's almost as if the way they calculate it, you're turning everything on all at once.
Yeah.
Because even in like a kitchen group, having a dishwasher increases your fixture count. But in reality, having a dishwasher, like if you didn't have that and you had to wash your dishes, you're using a lot more water
in the sink. Because
it's, if you wash dishes for 20 minutes, it's like 25 gallons of water, 1.2, so 22 gallons of water.
And new dishwashers have to be super water efficient.
Yeah, they use like 2, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, so some of that, I think that's a great question.
I'm curious. Yeah. To be like, okay, are we trying to fit these public work standards into, the building code? Because the building code changes about every 2 years.
Yeah.
And they have all these new requirements. So,
yeah.
Some of the challenges are like, can I have a separate meter for my ADU?
Right.
A water meter or an electric meter.
Or sub-meter. How to do that. Because, the more you try to detach it and make it a rentable thing, it's like, how much can you...
Yeah.
How much do you know what they're using? How much power are they using? How much water are they using? Mm-hmm. Things like that. So that makes a lot of sense.
But Excel doesn't like to give multiple meters, and do that. So it's kind of on the private side to set those management tools in.
Right.
Sub-meter it and stuff like that. What other ADUs have you been working on?
I think we pretty much covered. I mean, outside, because we talked, that Lakewood one is new, and that had its own set of regulations. And then, I tried to look into one in Boulder because and they were kind of looking at the basement area. Mm-hmm. And this is pre, them changing everything, but they had like a density, like a neighborhood check where like 10% of the homes within 2,000 feet or something like that could have one. And so we applied for it, and then that was unique. I think we didn't get it because there was too many in the area.
Right. You're like, who goes first wins.
Yeah.
And that's like, come on.
Yeah, and then Boulder had something because it wasn't allowed to be an ADU. There was a bar down there that they were going to turn into a kitchen. And so they regulated the sink size. Like, we couldn't have a real kitchen sink in the bar because it was too easy to convert.
That happened to us in one project in unincorporated Boulder County.
Yeah.
It was like a living suite. It wasn't, but he's like, oh, you can't have another sink that big.
Right.
We're like, what?
Had to be a bar sink.
Yeah. Like, okay. Let's see. We just did one in Erie. Right down on Briggs, like on the main Old Town.
Nice.
Oh man, it was a lot of fun. It's like a 3-car garage, so it's about 1,100 square feet.
Oh, okay.
And so it was bigger footprint. So they got a 2-car garage that they allow the renters of the home to use because the old home never had a garage. Yeah. And then a single bay for the ADU. Mm-hmm. And it had about 790 square feet finished.
Yeah.
And then a deck, an outside deck of about 300 square feet.
Yeah.
And it just overlooks Main Street in Erie. And
Oh, cool.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Erie was like, I think they've been on top of that for a long time, because I noticed in the new builds that they've got some live-in ADU homes.
Mm-hmm. So. And it's just, detached structures do cost more. Like I'm building a house again.
Yeah.
And I'm blown away at what it costs to build an ADU. You're like, oh, I got a garage foundation. Great, I got a garage. Then this, and then you're like, but you still have everything you're going to have in a house.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's why it's so expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just size. And then you say, okay, what's your cost per square foot? You're like, well, I'm only building 700 square foot. It's going to be really expensive.
Yeah.
You can't look at it that way.
Right.
You got to look at it, okay, selections make a big, fire hardening. The city of Louisville just passed their fire hardening code.
Oh, okay.
And everything has to be Class A, your deck. And I think they just modified it to Class B, but it's not readily available material. And they haven't even published it on the building department.
Is it citywide or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's anything. So if you replace your siding or affect part of your siding in an addition, any of that new siding has to be Class A.
Okay.
No matter where it is in Louisville.
Okay.
So pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Hopefully they figure that out. But yeah. Can you do an ADU at your house?
No. I'm within an HOA and a PUD. So that's something that's probably like a really interesting area where cities are really going to struggle.
Yeah.
Because a lot of PUDs, they have their own set of setbacks, utility easements, lot size, lot coverage. It sort of subverts like the city's code. So, like a lot of stuff that we do is in Old Town or like the standard lots, like the 25 by 150 foot deep lots in Old Town, Erie, Louisville, Boulder, all that stuff. But then planned unit developments that are, when those start, like, 80s, 90s, all of those, they kind of subvert all that. And so it'd be interesting how they would apply ADU code to those. Yeah. I have no idea how they would do that.
And in the state rules, I glanced over them, but it mentions it, but I didn't dive deep because it's like, an HOA is not going to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't have chickens because I'm in an HOA, but it's allowed in Lafayette. So.
Yeah. Would you get chickens if you could?
I'd try. I mean, we eat a lot of eggs with 3 kids.
Oh. And eggs aren't cheap.
Yeah.
So tell us something else, Ryan.
About what?
About you. About East Slope Design Studios.
We got our first employee. I got hired somebody. She's from Detroit. Mm-hmm. Got a master's degree. I cannot remember the name of the university right now. But it was like a private Catholic university there. So learning that process and
of having an employee for you.
Yeah. So it's great, like different resources, somebody to bounce ideas off of, and then just learning how to, teach and all of that. But yeah,
that's fun.
So we're growing and staying busy.
That's good. That's good. Well, hey, thanks for coming out today and just talking through the stuff that we know. And I look forward to our next adventures and future projects. So, We'll definitely do some stuff in the future here. So
all right.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
You bet.